He certainly doesn't need introduction. He's a very familiar face. U.S. Senator Gary Peters, one of my guests today on Spotlight. Senator, welcome back. I think it's the first time I've interviewed you since you've gotten the title Senator as opposed to Congressman.
Well, that's right, Chuck, and it's great to be with you again, as always.
It's always a pleasure having you in. Your reaction, you're no newcomer to Washington. You certainly aren't a newcomer to politics, but you're in a new House. A big difference between the House and the Senate that you've seen in this short period of time.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed it because it's a much smaller body, as you know. That's the thing that's been really wonderful for me. I come from a body of 435 members and now 100, and it's really an opportunity.
You know all their first names.
Well, yeah, actually, yeah, it's easier, and you build relationships. I mean, that's the key thing, to be able to kind of cross the partisan divide, to be able to have those kind of personal relationships. And it's a lot easier in the Senate.
Senator, do you feel as though there's less partisanship in the Senate because it is a smaller, more comforting body, so to speak?
Well, why don't you ask me that about 6 months?
Okay,
I think that would be good. But
maybe too early.
Certainly, the mood is there. The folks want to work together. I mean, we've been dealing with some partisan issues right now, which is typical right after an election. You've got to deal with that. But as we settle into the business of the Senate over the next few months, that'll give me a better indication. But certainly, I've gotten to know my fellow freshman members. I know there are 13 new U.S. senators. There are 12 Republicans and me. But it's an opportunity for me to get to know them over these last few weeks, and it's been very, very encouraging.
I assume that Senator Stabenow, our senior senator from this state, has helped you tremendously so far.
She has, yeah. She's been incredible. She's been a great mentor for me through the campaign and now in the Senate, and she's a real leader in the Senate as well, so it's helpful to have her there. And we've traveled, even this week as we were traveling around the state, we did some joint events on the west side of the state earlier. Sure.
The first big thing that affects everything that you're going to have to deal with is the president's budget. He has submitted it, trillions of dollars. Congresswoman Candace Miller was on this program a couple weeks ago, and she said it's dead on arrival.
Well, it's, you know, that'll go through the process through the budgets, the president's budget, then we'll have a House version, a Senate version, and there'll be a lot of debate going forward.
What do you think he'll get out of this that he really wants and that Democrats really want? And what do you think is, you know, that's pie in the sky, Mr. President, you aren't getting this.
Well, my focus has always been about middle-class families, to make sure that we have education programs, that we have services available for middle-class families. To me, that's got to be the #1 focus. Certainly the president focused on that issue in his State of the Union, and as Democrats, we think the divide between middle-class families and the folks at the very top is getting wider and wider. We have to make sure that the ladder of opportunity exists for everybody, and particularly those who aspire to be in the middle class and those who are in the middle class.
All right. He has increased spending for the military in the backdrop of ISIS and this war on ISIS. Is that something that you think he'll have a pretty easy time getting through?
Yeah, I think that's an area of agreement. ISIS is a significant threat. I serve on the Senate Homeland Security Committee.
Yes, you do.
And there's no question that the barbaric actions we're seeing from ISIS need to be stopped, and that they're engaged in burning pilots and beheading folks and are a threat to our homeland as well. That's why we are engaged very aggressively with airstrikes and also bringing together a coalition of other governments, and particularly Sunni governments, which is going to be critical for us.
A recent CBS poll said that for the very first time, Americans are showing a majority in favor of sending in ground troops. You agree or disagree, and you're someone who has a military background?
Right now, I think on the ground we need to have the Sunni governments. It's very important to have other Middle Eastern countries, the ground forces. We have Iraq. In fact, the Iraqi military, of course, did not perform when ISIS came in there. We were all very disappointed, but according to the Department of Defense, they do have mission-capable units that are ready to go on the offense. Now, they need to be backed by U.S. air power as well as other coalition partners, so I think we can provide air cover and significant strike capabilities with that air cover, but ultimately it needs to be Sunni governments that are leading the forces on the ground right now.
Is there a very real danger of the United States finding itself back in a war mode and committing our sons and daughters to a very dangerous territory?
Well, I'm very concerned about that. In fact, we have an authorization for military forces, put before Congress now. As someone who served in the Navy Reserve, I take that very seriously, and that is the most serious decision any member of Congress has to make, is whether or not to send men and women in harm's way, and that's why I'm very hesitant about ground troops. I don't believe that we should be sending U.S. ground troops in there at this point, that it should be air cover. But certainly we need to assist the coalition partners on the ground, Sunni governments, in their efforts on the ground.
All right, we need to take a little break. We'll hurry right back with a lot more questions and some that are a little closer to home here in Michigan. We'll be right back with U.S. Senator Gary Peters. Don't go away.
7 Action News at